yeah, so we got 3400 SR tank player. This is an interesting VOD. And this is, I'll tell you why it's interesting. This is not just a 3400 player. This is a Grandmaster player who is a DPS player who is trying to learn tanks and is struggling. So this is really a Grandmaster DPS player, but on an alternate account trying to learn tanks. Now this is probably it's not really smurfing per se, because it's not like this player is going down in the ranks and playing their DPS heroes, which they're good at. This is, if we say we had Roblox and we had hero-based SR or role-based SR, this person really would be a diamond ranked tank. Let me exit Discord. That doesn't keep happening. So yeah, it's gonna be a diamond. Hold on, I gotta answer this. Sorry, guys. Ooh, I didn't get to see what that was. Hold on. Thanks, Chach. Thanks for the 4 months. I really appreciate that. Are you the first 4 months? Were you my first sub? Or I think Kim was my first sub. Not sure. Anyway, this is a GM player, a GM DPS player, who has a true SR on tanks of Diamond, and it's interesting because what you get is a player that really understands how the game should work. From a DPS point of view, but that idea of like knowing what the tanks are kind of supposed to be doing isn't necessarily translating to knowing what to do on the tanks. Does that make sense? Anyway, we're gonna yeah. I think you were the second. Yeah, I think Kim was the first. Anyway, I appreciate your 4 months a lot. Thank you, Chach. Undyne's here. This is Undyne's account. All right, so let's get into it. What's
0.4, 3.9.
Want a mercy? Sure.
On his end, to be honest.
Okay, so yeah, I just skipped over it, but Undyne asked for a Zen because this person hadn't picked yet, and it's the right call. You want to start thinking about hero synergy at this point, and you really got Dive going on. Dive, Widow can exist in Dive. That's fine. You just sit in the back and deal damage from afar. Ana can heal the tanks from a distance, which is great for Dive. Ball's Dive, Winston's Dive, and then so if this is a question mark and this person hasn't picked yet, and you need a second healer, it's generally good to go something that can keep up with the dive tanks. You're gonna have trouble with Moira because she's really a close range kind of death ball-y type of healer. Break can throw her repair pack across the map, but only so far. What's up, No Tongue? You see any improvement since last week? I did yours for last week, right? Or was that the week before? Pretty sure I did yours last week. Anyway, you're gonna have trouble with Brig traversing the map and stuff like that. It's not gonna be aggressive enough, and you're not gonna be able to get into the fight fast enough. Yeah. Who else is there? Bap is gonna have trouble healing the mobile targets. Who else am I missing? Lucio can exist and dive, but generally Zen is better because with Lucio you have to keep up with the dive tanks and stuff, and you have to try to get yourself in there. With Zen, you can kind of just sit back with Diana and toss an orb in and let them run around with it. So Zen is just generally Zen, Ana, or Mercy are the three best healers for dive tanks or dive compositions. Mercy would have been a good pick too. Yeah, yes, I was just about to say that. I kind of did. But yeah, the reasons Mercy's good is that she can get around easily, get in there, fly up to high ground easily, heal the tanks. She can just get from person to person quickly. And she can get out when she has to. Which is good because you don't want a hero that engages with the tanks, and then when they disengage is stuck out there. So anyway. Punk for Zen was good. It's the right choice. But, again, this is a Grandmaster player playing on a tank account. And if you missed the very beginning, I explained. I'll just go over one more time. This is a Grandmaster DPS player playing on an alternate account where they're trying to learn tanks. They're not necessarily smurfing per se, because if they were smurfing would be if they would play the DPS heroes that they're already Grandmaster level at, and playing that in Diamond and just wrecking face. That's not the case. Say we had a roll lock and we had roll-based SR. This person would be a Diamond tank, and this is... Hold on one second. And this is what you get. Still working on being less greedy. It is hard to, because with yours it was such a macro problem that kind of probably encompasses your entire playstyle. It can be hard to change that on a dime. See, like, little things that someone's doing wrong, I can be like, hey, you're doing this little thing wrong, try to do this a little differently next time. With you, it's more like your whole playstyle revolves around this concept of being too aggressive / greedy, so it can be hard to change that quickly, but just keep an eye on it and try to work on it. Yeah, this is your Diamond tank count. So we're going to see a player that knows how the game should work, understands team compositions, understands stuff like that to a GM level, and understands what the tank should be doing, but is having trouble doing those things when there are, like, from a DPS point of view, they know what the tank should be doing, more or less, but is having trouble putting that together when they actually are the tank. So it gets interesting.
I don't know.
Shield management is helping a lot. Yeah.
What the fuck do I go with this wrecking ball?
Yeah, monkey or diva.
So what do you go with the wrecking ball? Usually you want to just go Diva. Diva's good with it. You should just always think of Hammond as a main tank. Anyone who says anything differently, you can send them my way.
The fuck?
Monkey isn't bad though. If you're gonna not take Diva, Monkey isn't bad. I mean, yes, it is technically 2 main tanks, but at least there's some synergy there.
Okay.
So, right off the bat, we're gonna see... Alright. Let me talk about how I approach this. Because this is a Grandmaster player, and I'm gonna kind of treat it as such, though it is a Diamond game. So, yes, it's a Diamond game, but I'm kind of treat it like it's a GM player. As it is. So, when you're approaching here on Busan, you gotta know that, hey, they're coming the same way down that same ramp, most likely, usually. So you want to approach and you want a hard attack right here, because you want to use this cover right here. Yes, they are probably doing the same, but you want to get to this cover and you want to hide behind this cover and then peek around the corner. There's something I'm gonna be talking about a lot in this VOD, and it's avoiding damage. And this player, you'll see, faces damage too often. Stands out in the middle of the open and just kind of takes damage for no reason. And it causes a lot of strain on the supports. And it causes a lot of strain on the DPS because it's hard for the tank to create space when they're constantly taking too much damage and having to back down for a second. So you really just want to walk at this and take cover and not take as minimal damage as possible. And then take the fight from there using cover. But instead, we're gonna open up this way to see what's over there, and we're gonna take some damage, and we'll see the effect it has on the rest of the fight.
Just let him go and do whatever he wants.
Do him on the right side. Yeah, face it too. Ain't got it.
Okay. Well, actually, you didn't take too much damage. But here's what's good. Genji. Did he just dash up there? He just dashed up there, right?
Do him on the right side.
So they are going a dive style composition as well. I think, spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure they have one. They're doing the triple DPS plus ball thing. So they are engaging the team here. So now you've got the play here is to counter dive and to jump back towards your own back line to A, help them, and B, do damage to their players that are engaging. But the play, you actually wait a second,
Yeah, face it too.
and it gets even better. The Genji actually isolates himself and dives uses his Swift Strike cooldown to dive up here on high ground. So now it gives you an opportunity to say, hey, Genji has no dash. I can go up there and contest him, and he can't get away from me. So,
Hey, Genji.
yeah, the jump trajectory is a little jank, but I'm not going to comment too much on that stuff. That's just something that comes with time. A little too high. You could have, instead of arcing up like this, you could have went like this and gotten a little further distance, and then maybe landed here, and started doing damage a little sooner. But that's just something that comes with time. That's not something I'm coach on really much. Plus, you can hold space. You can actually hold space at the end of the jump to get a little bunny hop to go a little further. Anyway. We're holding left click a little too long. Look how much, watch the ammo, right? Watch the ammo in the Tesla cannon.
Where you want.
Do him on the right side.
And now think,
Hey, Genji.
by the time we actually start doing damage to him, we got like somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 40 damage. You didn't know you could hold space? Yeah, if you hold space, it takes you a little further. You actually bunny hop at the end of it. Similar mechanics on a lot of heroes in this game, which I'm sure you know about. So like you can literally just hold down space as you're in the air with Winston when you shift, when you leap. I want to get out of the habit of calling things by their keybinds, because I know there might be some people watching you play on console. So like Ryan Charge, yeah, it's the same. It's exactly the same as that. All right. So yeah, by the time you engage, you actually don't have too much ammo left. So try to be a little bit more conservative with like not holding it down as often. But that's just a minor mistake. That happens to the best of us. We don't need to place the Winston. All right, look, I'm gonna be very critical of everything that's happening right now. So yeah, we got about 46 or 40 or so Tesla ammo left in the Tesla cannon by the time we engage, and then watch the putting down of the shield. You could maybe argue that you were trying to bubble over the Genji to try to stop the damage or something, but I think it's more likely that you're just spamming your cooldown when you land, because a lot of new Winston players will do that. You don't need to place this bubble. It doesn't accomplish much. Like, this Genji is very unlikely to kill you. Yeah. You know that one? Yeah. This Genji is very unlikely to kill you, and he's not even looking at you. Like, there's no reason to place down this bubble, and now you won't have it for when you need it. And you gotta be very careful about continuing to chase someone, because he just got a dash reset, right? You gotta be very careful about continuing to chase someone when they, when you no longer have your cooldown, when you no longer have bubble cooldown specifically. Or either cooldown, but he bubbled so Ana couldn't hit him. Oh, is the yeah, but he's outside of it anyway. Is the Ana? Where's the Ana?
Right side. Yeah, face it too. Hey, Genji.
Yeah, but he's already line of sighted himself anyway. Like he's line of sighted himself. And this bubble isn't stopping him from getting healed up here. You'd be better off. I'm arguing that you'd be better off saving the bubble, or if you continue to chase, or for really anything. See, look, so you would have killed him here, but because you wasted so much of that ammo, now you have to reload awkwardly. He definitely would have died here. And you get so committed to this 1v1 that you end up chasing, and now you don't have your cooldowns. And, yeah, you're just gonna die. You actually get the Genji, which is nice, but trading out for a Genji as a Winston, what's more important? One of the two DPS or the main tank? I mean, in this composition, when you run Winston and Ball, yes, you have two main tanks, but you're probably playing it as though Winston's the main tank in most cases. So yeah, your team's gonna be relying on you to engage. So yeah. Anyway, plus, another thing you have to consider is that Winston feeds 500 HP while Genji only feeds 200. Anyway, so there's a point where this fight, where he's out of your...
Chaser killed you. Genji one.
Yeah, so your whole team is basically dying, and there's a point where killing this Genji is no longer like he's basically gotten away, but you chase him beyond that point, and yes, you get the kill, but it gets you killed too.
Chaser killed you. Not good.
Yeah, so yeah, kill feed's all red.
I'm gonna switch to a McCree.
See, if you still have your bubble here, you might be able to still get away. I mean, probably not though, because you just over pursued so much.
Just smack
Maybe
Tracer in
not.
the face. Let's go.
Alright, let's go.
Lon, we're not with you, Anna and Tifa.
Alright, so something that's really important when you're dive tanks, also you're definitely the de facto main tank now because you have a diva now instead of a ball. I think, pretty sure it's instead of, right? Not in addition to. Anyway, one thing that's very important for diva or Winston or even hamster to an extent is high ground control. You are you are capable of contesting anybody sitting on the high ground, and as such, it becomes kind of your job to pressure people on the high ground and either A, kill them, or B, make them back off the high ground, allowing your team to take fights on the ground without threat of being shot down on by, you know, angles that they can't deal with. Right? So you wanna, you know the McCree's up here, he just shot at you a few times? There's absolutely nothing wrong with just jumping up here real quick and pressuring him off. If you jump up there and there's a bunch of enemies up there, then it's fine. You just wait. Let's if you jump up there and there's a bunch of enemies up there, it's fine. You just drop down real quick, back towards your team. You don't jump super far out, like way out in the distance. As a general rule, you don't want to jump into a situation that you're unsure of what's there. Because that's how you end up dying a lot. But yeah, you can just jump up here and pressure the McCree, make him drop. Use your bubble to block the flash, stuff like that. But instead we're gonna bubble out down here, and by bubble out I mean like just walk out. And watch. Remember when I talked about avoiding damage? Let's watch what I mean here. You're gonna get to see it.
So I'm gonna dive the McCree.
So we're just gonna kind of walk in a straight line and look straight at the damage, right? So let's watch this back again. Let's watch this and watch your health bar. You're giving him easy headshots too. You actually could have taken more damage than this if he lands 3 dinks. Let's go back here. Let's watch the way you walk across here. So you see Tracer's there. McCree's there. So now you know he's there. And you're just like, alright, I gotta get to cover over here. But you're just gonna walk straight across the screen in a straight line, without avoiding damage in any sort of way. So let's watch how you do it, and then we'll talk about what you could have done differently. See how much damage you take? And then look, you're still gonna engage because you're like, oh, because you just said I'm gonna jump to McCree, right? So now you're just gonna grab the mini real quick, and you're at 370 HP, you have no armor left.
I'm diving the
And look, you even take more damage on the way in because you're still staring straight at them and they know you're there.
McCree.
So yeah. Alright, there's a lot of things that go wrong there, and I'm going to talk about all of them. Alright. Now, if this is the way you're going to go and you're not going to pressure the high ground and drop down on them, because you could pressure the high ground, make them drop, then, you know, get an angle where you can drop down without using your leap cooldown onto them, do damage, and then leap away. Right? That's just one way you could go about it. Should I have looked away instead? Yes, you could do that to hide your head hitbox. Hiding your head hitbox becomes very important on tanks because your head is so easy to hit. But there's a different thing you could have done. So you can. It becomes very important as a tank to avoid as much damage as possible, so that when you do engage, you have full HP. Because you want to take this 1v1 that you want to take right now. It's not really 1v1. I think there's other people there, but even say it were 1v1, you want to take it at full HP, or as close to full as you can, with as many cooldowns as possible. You want to take it with as many things with as many things going for you as you can. Ult is better than no ult, but can't always help that. No, not just jumped up. No, here's what you want to do. Like I said, you could have jumped up and then dropped down on him. You could have actually jumped to the cover over here. So like when you see this, you just jump from cover to cover, and you keep just kind of going from cover to cover until you get yourself in a position where you can engage from safety. So like, you don't want to jump straight at him when he's staring straight at you. You're just gonna take too much damage on the way in. So what you want to do is you want to get an angle where you can drop down on him without you taking any damage when you come in. Which is why dropping down from the high ground onto him is a viable tactic, especially since it saves your shift. So that when you go in, you have your ability. You still have the ability to get out. But you gotta think about things in the context of, well, you can't always do that, right? You can't always just drop down from a high ground above their head. Sometimes there's someone up there. Sometimes there's no high ground to jump down from. So what you do in that situation is you want to jump from a different angle that they don't have sight on, or that they can't damage you as easily, or that they have to kind of put themselves at risk in order to. You want to use your shift to get out if you can. Yes, ideally. Using it to engage is okay in certain specific situations where you know you can confirm a frag and be safe and get out and last long enough. But when you jump in, you are committed. When you leap in as Winston, you are committed for 6 seconds. So you're locked in there unless you have your ult. That's what, yeah. So, alright, so let's talk about the avoiding damage, right? So you can jump, once you see he's here and he's shooting at you, you jump from cover to cover, you jump behind here. Then you wait for your shift to come off cooldown, and you jump from here to here. Then maybe you go up and you drop down on him, or you walk around and Tesla him in the back and then jump out. Or you can even, once you get to an angle where you can't really hurt you from, you can walk out a little bit and then jump on him from this way. This way he doesn't damage you on the way in, because this McCree only has line of sight here. Right, he has line of sight of all this. But so if you come in from this angle, he's not gonna be able to shoot you until you basically land into his line of sight. You could even just jump around here, wait for your cooldown, and then jump from this direction. It'd be a little better than jumping straight at him from here. So let's look.
Where is he?
And you just want to be a little more patient here. So if we're gonna decide to jump in from here where you can shoot us directly, you just gotta be a little more patient, and you gotta like wait for, you want to be full health, and you want to have both your cooldowns and such. But things are happening, so you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna go in. It might even be the better play to just jump back into your own backline and help your team with whatever's going on in there. I think there's a Doom in there or something. Oops. But anyway, so we're gonna jump in, right? Yeah, Lightning Bunny first, yeah. So yeah, you're gonna take another shot before you come in. Take a second shot. When you jump McCree, you gotta think of Winston's bubble as a cooldown blocker, not a damage blocker. It's not a shield in the sense of like Reinhardt or Orissa's shield. I mean, Reinhardt's blocks is kind of a mixture of both cooldown and damage blocking, whereas Orissa's more just for straight up absorbing damage. In most cases, you think of Winston's cooldown as like, this is gonna protect me from other cooldowns, key cooldowns, or ultimates, or stuff like that. Yes, it blocks 600 damage, but it's more important that you use it to shield yourself from flashbang, for example. So when you're on your way in, you gotta be thinking about, okay, well, when I jump McCree, it's gonna stun me. So you gotta land, and as you're landing, place the cooldown. Not when you land, almost a little bit before you land, because he's probably gonna try to flash you before you land. So you put down the bubble a bit early, and then you teeter around the edge of the bubble and do what's called barrier dance around the bubble to prevent him from being able to get damage onto you or flash you. And most of the times they'll just throw the flash right into the bubble. So yeah, you're gonna land, push him back a little, but not put down the bubble soon enough, so you're just gonna take the flash. You did try to punch when you land, which is nice, but yeah, it's more important that you just get the bubble down. Because now you're gonna get flashed, and it's just not gonna be a lot you can do. And then you're just gonna, remember I talked about barrier dancing? You really want to position yourself here and do this kind of teeter-totter thing that you're doing. You're strafing, right, which is nice, but you want to do it around the edge of the barrier. This way, if he's inside the barrier, let's say McCree is inside the barrier, right? Can I load up 2 colors at once? Oh. If he's inside the barrier, you want to be outside. Then McCree pushes outside the barrier to damage you because he can't shoot through the barrier, and you just go back inside, and you just keep doing that. And but all the while you're damaging him, and he's not damaging you. And that's how you want to fight. That's how you want to 1v1. It's Winston. If he pushes back in, and you just go back out. And yeah, that's how you want to barrier dance as Winston. So, what goes wrong here? We take too much damage on the way in. We approach from an angle that he's looking straight at, and take too much damage on the way in. We don't use our bubble to block a cooldown, so we end up getting stunned, and then we don't properly barrier dance. And all those things just results to us losing the 1v1. There's too many things going wrong. Yeah. Plus you're jumping into more than a 1v1 situation. You're jumping into a 3v1. But sometimes it's always yeah. You can also barrier dance as Orisa. Yeah, it's important for Orisa too. Sometimes you get surprised and jump into what you think is a 1v1 and it's more than a 1v1, so that happens to the best of us. But it's always best to gain as much information as you can about the target that you're diving and what position they're in and where their teammates are and just about the opponent's team in general before you jump in. You don't want to go in blind if you can help it, which is also why potentially jumping across here from cover to cover and then going around here and maybe going up top and looking down and stuff helps because it helps you gain more information. But your team was also dying during that time, so you felt a little rushed too. So there's that. You don't always have the time to be as patient as you want to be.
I'm feeding too much. I don't know.
Yeah.
Smash bomb.
Yo, this McCree needs to die.
Yeah, so we're just gonna blindly jump him. Remember I was talking about diving blind? So you're like, alright, McCree's right here and he's a little bit out of position, right? Because that's your first thought that's going through your head right now. You're like, McCree's too far up, we can punish him. And look, he's alone. He looks alone. You're like, let's just go get him. The problem with jumping in blind is you don't know what's around this corner over here. You don't know how many of McCree's teammates are over here, or over here around this wall, or back here. You don't know who's over there. So you jump in, and then just watch things go wrong. See him booped away. Right? But when you jump in like that,
This McCree needs to die.
there's an Ana right there who could have slept you if you actually landed in there. Yes, you could use your bubble to protect yourself from it, but again, you're not taking a 1v1 anymore. You're taking a 3v1. There's a ball there. Fortunately, the ball boops you out back towards your team, which is good. But yeah, so you end up jumping in, and now you don't have a bubble cooldown. And you jumped in, try to bite off a little more you can chew. It's not always going to work out that cleanly where you get saved by the enemy Hammond. The other thing is that you got to think about, again, I've talked about this before, high ground control. As Winston, it is your job to deny the enemy team high ground positioning when you can help it. You don't think before you go in. Yeah, you're not considering all the things I'm talking about. Like, it's very easy for me to pause this and talk about all the stuff that you should be considering. But when you're playing and things are going fast, you're not thinking about those things. You're just like, I gotta go in and do this and kill this person, so you just go in, right? Yeah, you're not thinking enough. Yes, that is the problem. But it's hard to slow down your gameplay and really think about things. You kind of have to play slower than you want to. Playing slow is generally good in most circumstances. Anyway, you can jump up here and pressure this Genji for free. Just jump up here, use this cover so that Ana can't sleep you and whatever. and pressure him off. Even if the Ana heals him, now the Ana is not healing their tanks, or he's not healing someone else, and you're 2v1ing and you're wasting time. The Genji is not going to kill you very quickly, if at all, and you can always just drop down if you need to into your own backline, and you can build your ultimate by just dealing with and best case scenario, you kill him, which is not likely because the Ana will probably just heal him, but you could even pressure him off, and if you do enough damage to him, he might get scared and just drop. And now you forced him off the high ground. Now this guy does not have an angle on your team from above, which is good. You've just denied him high ground control. This is fighting for high ground control. This is just dive tank tactics 101. D.Va does this too. Winston does this, and to an extent, Hammond does it too.
That's nice. I'm stuck.
It's a little harder for Hammond to do, but when you master his mobility, you can do it just fine. Hammond in general is just harder.
Where is she?
You do get a lot of return on investment when you get good at good with ball.
I smacked her. Pull up, leave him in his group when he.
So yeah, so you got the leap punch in, but he gets nano by the time you get there.
Smacked her. Pull up, leave him in his group.
So yeah, you're engaging without your bubble cooldown again too. You're playing a bit too fast. Again, you're just not waiting for cooldowns. You're not waiting for favorable situations, right? You do have all your health this time, which is nice. But if he doesn't get cucked, if Doomfist doesn't get cucked by this map terrain right here, he punches you and you just instantly die. And generally, with Winston, you have to be very careful with the 1v1s you take. There are some that are very heavily outside of your favor, and Doom is one of them. But that's something I'm going to talk too much about. That's very specific to the situation.
Where's Ana? I'm gonna dive Ana.
So I feel like you kind of just make it up in your mind where you're going to go, and you're just like, I'm doing this, and then you just do it regardless of what's going on in front of you. Because you're like, where's Ana? I'm going to dive Ana. You're in. Now you're kind of jumped in a little blind again, and look at the situation again. You're 3v1ing, you get stunned by flashbang, and you're just dead. Now let's look at
I'm gonna dive Ana.
So yeah, you don't have all your health again, you're playing a bit too fast, you don't have your cooldowns, you don't have bubble, you have nothing. You're just playing too fast. And I'm sorry if I sound harsh. It's just like, these are like very basic like fundamentals of Winston, and yes, again, this is a Grandmaster player, so I'm going to be a little harsher. Because this is a very good player. And see this player point jump right, it's insane. But you know, it's just not the same on Winston because this player doesn't know. Hey, Rich, what's up? Yeah, but yeah, you just want to be a little more patient. Wait for your cooldowns. Wait for your health to be full. Then go in, gain as much information as you can, and take a favorable fight. Take the enemy who's most isolated. Take the enemy who's most vulnerable. Take the enemy who you just saw use a cooldown that they need in order to survive against you, or something like that. Or you can just jump into a pile of enemies here. When you know you have your bubble up and you have more health and you're not going to instantly die, sometimes it's an okay strategy to be like, I'm at 95%, I can get my primal before they kill me, and just jump into 3 enemies, get a last splash damage, and then, yeah. Makes us feel bad.
Dude, I'm just getting like short back here.
Oh, were you not in mech?
Yeah.
I was fighting. Yeah, I was fighting a tracer.
Thanks for 3 months, Rich. I appreciate that.
Man, I wish this guy had said that.
It's 2 subs today, thank you.
I wouldn't have jumped in.
Yeah, so you're like, oh, okay, well, I wish I knew this guy wasn't in mech, I wouldn't have jumped in. It still would have been an unfavorable situation. It was still a 2v3. And even if that were the case, you know, you didn't ask, like, just because you're playing so fast, you're like, I'm gonna jump on it. The guy doesn't have a chance to be like, hey, I don't have my cooldown, or hey, I don't have my mech, or I don't have this, I don't have that, I have no matrix, I'm low, I can't go. So, yeah, it's the same, right? You gotta slow it down. So we're also just kind of placing our bubble every time we leap onto a target, right? This time, it's a little more okay because you're trying to prevent the tracer from getting damage onto your Ana and stuff. So sometimes it's a little more okay. But you're noticing a trend, right? It's like every time we jump in, the moment we land, we're placing bubble. Sometimes it's okay to, yeah, Undyne. This is, yeah. But sometimes it's okay to drop and wait till you start really taking damage, or wait till things get a little hairy, then place down the bubble, because it gives you a little bit longer of survivability. Because not always when you land are people going to be focusing you, are people going to even know you're there, are people going to actually deal damage to you, or turn around. So sometimes you just want to wait until you actually start taking damage to put it down. This one's a little more okay because you're trying to help the Ana, but it seems like you haven't really figured out exactly the distance that the bubble goes. So what ends up happening is it doesn't really save the Ana in any sort of...
If it said that he wasn't in mech, I wouldn't have jumped in.
So, like, I think, because, like, you're like, oh, well, I'll cut off the tracer, right? But it doesn't go here, it goes here. So the tracer's still standing on the outside of the bubble, and it does not a lot. Now you wasted your cooldown for nothing. So you gotta, the only thing I can say about that is that's another thing where it takes a lot of time. Like, I've gotten it down to a point where I know exactly how far the bubble goes, so I can jump in on a hog that's hooked to target and place the bubble perfectly between them, or something like that. That's something that only comes with time. You can mess around with it in, like, a custom game and, like, get a feel for exactly how far it goes, but that's, like, the only tip I can give on it. But yeah, so now we have no bubble cooldown. We kind of gotta go, but we could have waited a little longer for our cooldowns to come back. We also have primal,
Super avoiding me.
so we're touching too early.
Oh no.
Okay, no, well, we were at 798 or something. Maybe it's not a bit too early. It's hard to tell because it's a little blurry. It says at 95, right? You really want to try to wait till exactly like 99 or so to try to touch, to give your team the maximum amount of time to get ready to jump in with you. Because otherwise you're just going to feed on your own and then die, and then your team's going to be in a 5v6 where you just fed 1500 HP.
Avoiding me.
Oh no.
Yeah, you got primal and then you got nano at the same time, which is a little unfortunate. But so the moment McCree deadeyes, when you are primaling, you've got to hide or boop him away and then take cover. You cannot show yourself anymore. He will kill you, especially with the new deadeye changes. Yeah, see, this is a diamond game because Undyne doesn't play tanks, so Undyne's not very good at it. But yeah, so you want to boop him away and then hide. So what you don't want to do is think of primal. What you do not want to do is think of primal as an invincibility button. It is not that. You are still 100% killable. So don't think that you're invincible because you can die in less than a second.
I slept.
If the circumstances are bad enough. So, so yeah. So look how much damage the McCree does to you. Even though you're nanoed and primaled. You're still nanoed. He did 1600 damage to you almost just now. Because you're still nanoed, right? Yeah. He did 1600 damage to you just now. Because you're still facing him. You've got to get away. You've already forced OT. Just go over here and hide, or harass whoever is over here if possible. Whatever. But you cannot face the McCree.
I slept.
It's like the perfect counter to primal. But yeah, you can't jump right at him. So I want to say, like, yeah, 1600 damage is crazy, right? Yeah. So I want to say, like, the biggest problem you see so far is that, like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but you take too much damage. Like, you're just taking too much damage, and it's gonna make it so that the healers have to focus on healing you so much that they can't heal these guys, that they can't heal the other tank, that you're just taking so much resource from your team in order to just try to survive, and then you die anyway because you're just taking so much damage. And it's nuts. Like, you were nano and primal there and you still died.
I can't supply enough heals.
Trish is one.
And I want to clear up a misconception, right? I want to clear up a misconception. And that's that the tanks, like a main tank, should be always absorbing damage to protect their team, to take the pressure off their team. That is not true. That is not true. The more damage you are taking, the more resources you are taking from your team, Matrix Zarya bubble, you know, Ana's darts, maybe Ana's nade, Mercy's now healing you. Now you get Zen Orb, you get whatever, you get all these things, right? Maybe Lucio has to amp it up to keep you alive. Now he doesn't have it to keep himself up or to speed boost or to do whatever. And you're taking so much resource from your team that you can't use those abilities in other areas. If Ana has to nano you to keep you up, now all of a sudden you can't nano blade. And yeah, beat drop. Yeah, right. You're having to use ultimates, you're having to use all these things. It is better to avoid damage when possible. And if you have to, tell your team, hey, listen, I'm taking cover, everyone take cover for a second. Like, this is more relevant to Rhine and Deathball. It's not as relevant with Dive because nobody's expecting you to straight up protect your teammates with Winston. And to, like, you know, help your team get from choke to choke. That's not how Winston works. Oh, I got the peanut butter emote too. Yeah, I paid the Oh wait, no, that was for the Orisa emote that I had to mega cheer for, but I wanted the Orisa emote, so I mega cheered for that. I think the peanut butter one was just watch 2 days, right? Anyway, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, right. So avoiding damage is always going to make it so that your team has to put less resources into you, and you're just going to be higher HP more often, and that is going to allow you more favorable situations. So use cover to get from place to place. I kind of want to call it guerrilla tactics, and that's not even a joke. It's like guerrilla warfare, just moving from cover to cover quickly, and you know, and then leaping on your enemy when the time is right, or you know, when you have a good angle, when you can catch him by surprise. So yeah, it's not your job to just absorb as much damage as possible. It's really quite the opposite. There are times when you want to take focus off your teammates, and that's cool. But those times, you got to be able to recognize when those times are happening. I watched this. I watched the VOD. I know the second round has a lot of frame drops. It happens twice. One of them's during a fight, and one of them's after you die. So, let's talk about. Look how much damage we're taking, right? How much of that damage was necessary? Like, how much of this is necessary damage that you need to take to relieve pressure off your team? See how much you're taking? Like, you took like 200 damage there for like zero reason at all, and now your Ana has to heal you instead of healing someone else. The other thing is because you're standing out in the middle of the open too often, and you're kind of facing. I call it facing damage. It's like square. It's like you're standing out in the open, and you're like, hey there, and like just like, please shoot me. Whereas you could be, you know, standing with this cover. This way, if you get shot at all, you can just like quickly duck behind cover and go around this way. You want to hug cover as much as possible. So yeah, so you want to just go here instead of going up here and then dropping down here, because the less time you spend out in the middle of the open, especially as someone like Winston, where there's not a whole lot, you'd have to waste your cooldown and your long bubble cooldown in order to protect yourself. You just can't stand out in the middle of the open too long. You just can't face damage as Winston. He's too squishy for it. I know it sounds ridiculous, he's too squishy, but he is. You can't just hold up a shield like Ryan and then get from place to place. Yeah, he has a massive critical hitbox too. So the other thing is that you want to use your shield to block specific cooldowns. Things like Hammond's pile driver is a good example, because if Hammond is dropping down on you and he's just gonna drop down right next to you, you can put your bubble between you and where he drops. Say he drops here, and you will not take any damage and you will not be knocked up if he lands on the outside of your bubble, or if you land on, if he lands on the outside of your bubble and you're on the other side, he will not knock you up. So you can use your cooldown. You can use your cooldown to block his cooldown. So that's why you want to think about Winston's bubble as a cooldown blocker, because you take like 75 damage there. You take the full burst of it, I think.
Ball on point.
And you're still really late. You're still really late to put down your bubble. Yeah. By the time you put this thing down, it's look how much damage you're already taking. Right. Remember when I said you want to be a little reluctant to put down your bubble until you start taking damage? Well, you started taking damage. You're in the middle of this 1v1. There's no reason for you to not drop this right now. So, It was like you're weirdly conservative with it right here for no reason.
Not at that.
I know you need heals.
Like, I'm
So yeah.
trying to Saigan. I'm literally just getting destroyed by DPS.
So we're a little bit like frustrated with the healing, right? So you're like, all right, well, what does this guy play? Because that's what you're looking at, right? You're just like looking at what does this guy actually play, so we can try to see if we can get this guy in the right hero. Seems like the healer he plays the most is Ana anyway. But I'd argue the problem isn't necessarily the Ana's healing. It's more that you're just taking so much damage. There's just no way that Ana can feasibly heal all of that up without sacrificing other teammates. And if she could, she like I said, if she could heal it all up, your teammates would be getting nothing. And you don't want to be the tank that sucks all the healing out of your team. I don't want to talk too much about the Overwatch League because that's like not really relevant to ladder play. But look at, if you guys remember season 1 of Overwatch League, the NYXL would play this strategy where the Mercy would pocket the Zen and allow Jonak, put most of the resources into Jonak and let him carry. This left the tanks without healing. They basically had to rely on Zen Orb for healing. The two of them, the D.Va and the Winston. We're thinking about things in the context of dives, so that's usually what it was, right? And now so Mono and Meko have to survive with very little resource, so they have to mitigate the amount of damage they are taking. Whereas a team like the Gladiators last year in season 1 would rely on Fissure to carry them, their main tank, and they'd pump all the resources into him. Well, the reason that doesn't work is because now your tank is taking all this damage because you're trying to rely on him to carry, so he doesn't get as much opportunity to avoid damage as much as possible, and you're sucking down all the resources into him and not leaving a lot for your other squishier targets. Whereas with the NYXL strategy, where they would pump all the resources into the off healer, it would allow the healers to stay up longer, so that they could keep up the other targets better. And but the tanks would have to. Frage's talking about New York, yeah. So the tanks, like Mono and Meko, would have to avoid damage as much as possible because they just had very little resource. Try to play like Mono and Meko in that situation. In that example, you want to be the tank that sucks down as little resources as you can, because while it might be something you can't really measure, or might be something you might not necessarily be able to tangibly see, that avoiding damage is going to help your teammates stay alive longer than it would if you are facing damage constantly and absorbing damage. Because you might think, oh well, I'm taunting them, right? I'm taking all their aggression, I'm pulling all the aggro. Yeah, but you're also pulling all your team's resources too. And now, if the McCree needs that healing really bad, well, the Ana's forced to choose. Well, do I keep the Rhine up or the McCree up? Who do you think they're going to choose? The Rhine every time. It's an easier shot. It's a more impactful. It's a more important hero to the fight. You need your front line up, and you can get by without the McCree, but you can't get by without the Rhine. So you got to keep it up. And that's just, I'm not saying that you can't get by without a Rhine. That's more so just me saying you can't get by without the main tank. So whereas the player that avoids damage as much as possible allows their team to put more resources into their teammates. And if your teammates are alive longer, they're helping you more.
You can run away.
Anyway, that's my spiel on it.
The problem is I'm on top of everybody.
Alright.
Oh boy.
So yeah, you're a little confused as to what to play. I skipped over all that, but you're a little confused as to what to play. Winston is fine here. In fact, I'd argue Winston is the pick here. Because they have so many DPS and so many squishies and very little front line, Winston's good. The more squishies, the better it is for Winston. You could also go Ball, but that's something that takes a lot of practice and a lot of know-how. And even D.Va takes a lot of practice and a lot of know-how. I mean, they all do, to an extent, but Ball is really hard to master, and D.Va is very easy to feed with if you don't know what you're doing. Winston is a little bit more user-friendly for when you're kind of new to him than the other two are. I would argue. But Winston's good in this situation because you can kill the squishies easier. So there's nothing wrong with your hero pick specifically. I think he's talking about the Genji getting too much value.
Like dive.
Good coaching advice. Yeah, so my aim for this is not just to help coach the player that I'm coaching currently. It is to, for anyone watching to be like, hey, I play Winston and this makes a lot of sense for me too. That's why a lot of times I'll talk about overall concepts. Like, using your bubble to block cooldowns and stuff, or avoiding damage in general, as opposed to specific things. Yes, I will address specific problems in the gameplay to help the person I am coaching specifically, but I'm also going to talk about overall concepts so that it helps everyone. You make very similar mistakes. Yeah, a lot of people do.
Okay, so left side.
Yo, we can dive.
See how you're using the cover right now, and you're like, oh, I took damage, I'm just gonna go back. This is perfect. This is perfect. Watch this. We do chase the ball a little hard, but he's not gonna die anytime soon. He's still got like a lot of HP. But you're like, hey, he just rolled through our whole team. He must be low, because sometimes it's hard to see their. Look at his health bar, right? Sometimes when you get really close to him and stuff, you can't really tell what his health is anymore. So you're like, I feel like he's probably getting pretty low. So you just kind of push it a little. But yeah, when he rolled through your whole team, he put up his shield, his adaptive shields, and probably got like 500 extra HP. So, but whatever, right? You drop down, you take some damage. Look how close you are to the wall. Look how easy that is. When you're like, hey, I'm taking damage, let me avoid taking more damage. Whereas if you're standing out in the middle of the open, too far out from cover, like here, for say, and you start taking damage, well, you gotta walk all the way back around, and you're gonna take 200 or 300 damage by the time you get back. Here, you just took a few hit points of damage, and look, you're behind cover. And you get to reload behind cover, you get to, you get to slow down and think for a second. Whoops. And then we're gonna peek again, try to get more information. Where are they? Where are they? We take a rocket to the face? Well, guess what? I'm back on the cover again. It allows you to slow down when you play around cover like this. When you use that kind of get from cover to cover type approach, it allows you to slow down your gameplay. What you will note is, look, when we're here and you're like, okay, well, what do I do? What do I do? You don't have to constantly find someone to jump. You can just find cover to jump to. You don't have to peek to try to find someone to jump onto. You don't always have to be trying to kill someone. You can take space. Because you're the main tank, right? You can be like, you know what? I'm gonna look how far back they are. They're all like either up here somewhere, or they're like all the way back here, whatever, right? Well, look at all this space that's open. You could just be like, you know what? The nice part about this part of Busan is that there's this big drum in the middle of the point that you can use to hold behind. So you could just jump back behind the cover here and use this instead, and use this as cover. Now you've advanced your team, you've claimed more space. Now this is all your, instead of just this being your space, now all of a sudden all of this is your space. Because you claimed that space. So you just jump here to behind cover, and the fact that you're peeking from the cover here allows you to gain this information, right? This is what's important. This is what you want to be doing as Winston. You want to hold the cover, look, assess the situation, think about what you're going to do. You don't have to jump on someone if there's no one to jump onto. If they don't give you a target and they're giving you that much space, just take the space. Right? Jump to the point, claim the point. Now, they have to push into you. They have to push into your team now if they want to reclaim the point. They have to do something. They have you gotta put the ball in their court and be like, you have to do something to us now, because I have claimed this territory and now it's mine. But instead, watch this.
Yo, we can dive that soldier in the back.
So like, yeah, but instead you're looking for targets. You're trying to constantly, you're thinking about things from a DPS point of view instead of a tank's point of view, right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. You're just like, who am I gonna kill? Who am I gonna kill? That's what you're constantly thinking about. As a tank, you can't be thinking about who am I gonna kill? Who am I gonna kill? It's gonna be, how do we win this fight? How do we take this point? What do I need to do to get our team in the best position possible? The answer to that question is here. How do I get a kill? The answer to that question is here, really far away, and you're gonna take a lot of damage by the time you get there. You're not going to be able to leap that far, and you're going to have to do a little bit of walking and bunny hopping up next to him, and you're just going to take so much damage on the way in, it's not going to be a feasible thing.
This is on right here.
Thanks for the 3 months. Wait, did I just, why did I get that as for a second time? Crusader in the sheets, nice. Why did I get that message a second time? I'm a little confused. Oh well, cause like you like subscribed before, but then I got it again. You tricked the stream. It did this last time. Yeah. Okay. All right. So look. All
Right here.
right. So look how this goes down, right? You're like, all right. Well, how do I get killed? How do I get a kill? How do I get a kill? So you're like, all right. Well, I'm gonna walk up this way. The soldier stop.
Yo, we can dive that soldier in the back.
This is on right here.
The guy goes, there's an honor right here, right? So you're like, you're thinking about things in context of who am I gonna dive instead of where am I gonna dive. That make that. I think that's the best way I can put it. Think about where you're gonna dive, not who you're gonna dive. Then Twitch gives you an option to share. Okay. I didn't know that. I don't do a lot of. I've done a lot of viewing. Like I watch Emong a lot and stuff like that. But I only use my Prime sub on Kim's stream. That's Kim twitch.tv/KimmyKin. She plays horror games, and you can watch her get scared on stream. Right now she's playing Alien Isolation, and it's hilarious. But anyway, I use my Prime sub on her. And you guys should all go give her a follow, by the way. That would help her stream. And anyway, but I've never noticed that share option, so I'm kind of new to the whole Twitch interface in general, and I'm kind of new. Like I've only been streaming for 4 months, so someone gift a sub. You have a Prime sub? You have Amazon Prime? Should I start shilling out for Prime subs and start explaining to people about the awesomeness that is Twitch Prime? Anyway, so let's go back to the gameplay.
Yo, we can dive that soldier in the back.
This is on right here.
So you're thinking about things in the context. You're just gonna give up all that space, and you're just like, all right, well, we're just gonna go and jump in. So you don't know who's on the other side of that, right? You're jumping in blind again, and then you're like, oh, McCree's right here. I'm gonna get flashed. I gotta put this down. But they back off, right? They give you the space.
Back.
Watch them give up the space as soon as you come in. Watch them all hold S, right? They're all back, but only like, well, we can't stand here. Winston will just kill us before we can get through the Winston bubble and his 400 HP. Oh, the Streamlabs? I don't use Streamlabs. I use OBS Studio. I don't like Streamlabs. Yeah, watch Kim get spooked. It's great. Alien Isolation is, oh my god. I recommended her playing this game because I've heard good things about it, but I've never actually, played it myself or seen it played. Oh, it seems like such a good game. It seems like an anxiety fest, though. So it only seems like a good game if you're a masochist, I guess. Anyway, so look, they're all gonna just give up the space, right? But when you're Winston, they're all gonna hold back. She's going back. That's going back, right? You're like, all right, well, I want to confirm this frag, right? So you're thinking about things in context of who am I going to kill, not that I just claimed all the space for my team. Good job, team. Now let's go cap the point. So you place down your bubble, and you are now anchored to the spot. I don't like to use the term anchor referencing Winston because people get the wrong idea. Because he's not an anchor tank, and that's not the way you should play him. He is a main tank. There's a difference, but you don't get anchored to a spot. But when you place down your bubble as Winston, when you're diving in and under enemy fire, you are now anchored to that bubble, and you can't stray too far of it. Think of it like a ball and chain, right? If you go too far, you're gonna die, so you gotta get back to it. And watch what happens when you stray too far out from the spot that you anchored for yourself. That's what happens. And maintain create space. There's more to it. You gotta sets up the engagement, and generally, usually has some sort of initiation tool. Sets up the engagement, create space, or take space, or hold space, and usually has some sort of initiation tool. In Arisha's case, that's not necessarily the case, but she does those other things so well that you just play around her that way. But yeah. Yeah, Mescus, yeah. Yeah, it takes a special kind of person to main tanks. Especially main tanks. Or main tanks, rather. So yeah, you know you push too far outside your bubble. That's what happens, right? Once you put down that bubble, you are anchored to that spot because that's your safety net. That's your safety net. Once you go push beyond that, it's like you're tossing away the 600 HP of the bubble and just saying, you know what, now I have, instead of having 1100 HP total, now I just have 500. You're just tossing in the garbage. And now you're just saying, please kill me. Because you can't, what, are you just going to walk forward until you die? It's basically what happened there. Because Winston has this cone of damage, right, that comes out from his gun. And yes, you can hold W, as your account says, and push that cone a little further. But if they are on the outside of it and just holding S, they will, you know, stay out of range of it indefinitely until... Yeah, you can actually walk forward in this game a little faster than you can walk backwards. So you will eventually catch up with them, but it's very, very minimal, the amount, like, how fast you'll catch up. It's the speed difference. So yeah, you don't want to do that because you'll just take too much damage. You want to be anchored to that spot. Once you place in the bubble, that's your space. That's your space now, because you got to hold down that spot until you get your jump cooldown back off cooldown. Why isn't D.Va a main tank? She doesn't. She doesn't necessarily take or create space as well as the other tanks do, or hold space. She can take space, or she can kind of like push someone off the high ground and contest space, but she can't hold that space very long. Or like, say you pushed her into the point, right? Yeah, she's in that space, but she can't hold that space. She doesn't have any sort of, yes, she can initiate, but she can't really hold that space once she's taken it, or once she's pushed into it. So, yeah, she has a hard time. What she does do really well is peel, which is the hallmark of an off tank. Protecting and peeling. D.Va does that really well. Sorry, does that really well. And Hog doesn't necessarily absorb damage, but he does peel with his hook a little. Really kind of just support the main tank too. She is fantastic at contesting high ground, yes. In that sense, she is good at taking that space. That is the one situation where she is capable. But yeah, you wouldn't normally play as a main tank. You can try to make it work. I've seen, there have been instances where teams try to do that sometimes, even at a high level. But it's hard to make that work.
Tank set.
Like, what would you suggest?
No. Why don't we get dive
Where's the
DPS
hog?
and dive them?
So there's a bit of a disagreement right now on your team about whether you should get a different set of tanks or a different set of DPS to help with the dive. Right, you got the Winston D.Va combo going right now, right? And the one person can we get a different set of tanks? Well, the only thing you could go Orisa Hog, and that might work. They do have, what you gotta consider is what they have, and you gotta consider things in the context of what they have. They have a lot of different firing angles, right? They're gonna come at you from a lot of different angles. They're 1-4-1. They got 4 DPS, 1 healer, 1 tank. What's gonna be best against that is probably gonna be dive. If Orisa puts down a shield, yes, you can hold behind the shield, bunker behind the shield really, really tight, but they might just be able to get, because they have so many mobile characters and so much, such a lack of frontline, they're just gonna kind of get angles around the shield and shoot you from the back or shoot you from different angles, maybe over the top, whatever. Brian is just gonna get abused because he's not gonna, it's gonna be the same problem, it's gonna be actually worse. Because he can't put down a new barrier every few seconds. And we could go hamster and try to do the same thing to them and turn it into a kind of a death match. But really, all you need to do, the win condition here, is all you have to do is think about, what is my win condition? Well, this is their only healer. You guys just go in on that, you can kill that. Or they have such a lack of frontline that you can just take space look at everyone except the McCree is gonna be fine at like kind of, well, maybe the Ana might have a rough time too. But the Ana and the McCree can kind of sit on the back, up on the high ground right here, or not the high ground, but you know what I mean, the little perch right there. And kind of sit back there on the back line and do damage, and then these four can kind of just hold the point. You got more, you're a little beefier than the other team. You can afford to stay on the point a little longer. Put it on the right click, yeah. So the question is, well, what should you change? You could ditch the McCree in favor of something that's going to be either a little divier or a little that's going to be able to get to the point quicker, or just going to be able to go with you, be able to maybe assassinate the Ana, something, or something a little tankier that's going to be able to hold space more. You don't really need to switch the tanks up.
They're not even running tanks. Like, we can run more tanks.
Why don't we go
Need to
goats?
dive them.
We fucking goats, dude.
No, that counters goat.
So the ball comp is decent against goats. Whether or not your team is going to be able to run efficient goats, because it's not necessarily the most super high ranked game of all time, or whether or not they're going to be able to counter your goats efficiently, is, I don't know. Who knows? But it's not the worst idea. You could just cheese the point down, right? Just stand on a point and be so tanky on the point that that it's hard for them.
Yeah, I know, but it's still
Diamond.
dive would still work against this.
Alright, let's get this soldier in the Ana in the bag.
Fall behind us. Ana, you got
I'm diving soldier.
Again, look how much damage you take on the way in, right? You come in straight. Yes, you came in from a different angle this time, but they're looking at you by the time you jump in. They're kind of aware you're there, and you've kind of predetermined who you're like, let's drive the soldier in the Ana, right? Other things happen, but you're like, you know what? I'm sticking with what I just said because I said it. And even though they saw you, you still go in, and they're looking right at you. And look how much damage you're just gonna take. You're just dead in the water. You just basically have no chance now. Okay, so the stream starts to lag. I'm gonna skip forward. Okay.
counter, successfully counter dive over in the back.
I don't know what's going on with this guy's mic.
No, I'm not even gonna argue. Go. Anyway.
I think dive tanks are the right choice. I just don't think
I agree.
we have anything that works with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's that you don't have anything that works with it, or if it's that you guys aren't coordinating it right. You don't need to think about things in context of who we're gonna dive. It just needs to be what space are we gonna take, or where am I gonna dive. This whole time, this team has no point presence whatsoever. They have a ball. That is it. You guys could just be like, hey, we're the tankier team. Let's go stand on the point and force them to come to us. But nobody suggests that ever in the VOD.
You just have no dive.
Yeah.
You're just worried about who you're gonna dive, which is
Zarya is definitely
not how you want to play it. So look how much resource you're requiring, right? Let's just go back.
Yeah, I agree with it.
How much damage you take during all this?
You just have no dive.
Yeah, I agree.
This time is not necessarily your fault because you are behind cover this time and like you're still trying to figure out other stuff. But it's just a good example of put a lot of resource going into a main tank. Like this time, I will give you it's not necessarily your fault. Because look, they just have so many angles on you.
Zarya is definitely not the pick.
You could hug the wall a little tighter to not give the tracer the angles on you, which you probably should be. So that's the counterplay to this. Hug the wall a little tighter. Usually the counterplay to all. I have a thing about walls and corners. I think you'll see over time. I love me some nice wall, but yeah, look how much resource, look how much healing goes into you during all this. You gotta think maybe Lucio dies because of that. Maybe somebody dies because they're not getting a lot of healing because you're getting all of it.
Oh my god.
Nice short jump there.
Ballon.
Probably could have gotten away with a long jump there, but it shows that you know how to do it.
Ballon.
Oh my god. They're just diving us constantly because they have the things.
See, yeah, you can hold space right there and get a little extra distance. Like look at the way you land and just stop.
Oh my
Right.
god. They're just diving us constantly because they have the tanks.
See how you land and just stop exactly where you are? You could hold space and go and like bounce a little forward. Like bounce, 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 and then you just all of a sudden gained like 10 meters. The angles on this map are a struggle, yeah. You always gotta be worried about main tank about the angles that the other team is gonna take against you, especially when you're playing against this many DPS. And they're just gonna kind of confuse you with how many different angles they're getting on you, and you just don't know where to go and what to do. In that situation, you've got to either try to find the most isolated target that is within your reach and kill that person, and then just take it one by one after that, or find a way to successfully, you know, hold a spot, then get to another spot, then get to another spot. Like I said, that guerrilla warfare, right? You're just getting from cover to cover to cover to cover until you can either get close enough to an enemy to kill them, or get to the point, or find a way to make something to create an opportunity via moving around the map, right? Say they got let's think about this point. Okay, let's think about this being the point. Then you got the high ground back here, and the high ground back here. Little room with the thing over it in it, with the packs on the other side. These packs. Then you got the stairs in this other room, here, right? All right. So let's think about that. So if they're gonna be, you know, here and here, and then you got someone over here, and you got another person with an angle here, and you got the tracers over here, and you got, I don't know, maybe you got a Doom over here. You got all these angles, and you're like, well, what do I do? Well, sometimes if you're able to get yourself from cover to cover and get yourself in a position where now all of a sudden, instead of being, you know, here, you're I don't know, let's say you're behind here. Well, now all of a sudden it's much easier because you managed to get yourself from cover to cover until you get yourself in a position where now I can take this fight and they're not going to have line of sight. They're not going to be able to help. They're not going to be able to get back in time. It's about shifting around the map until you create an opportunity for yourself. Not who am I going to dive, is where am I going to dive. Yeah.
Oh man.
So look how much damage you take, right? You're just facing so much damage all the time. And this is a really rough game because of those angles, right? It's hard. I struggle with this sometimes against these comps because they just have so many angles on you that it feels like no matter where you go, you're just taking so much damage before you can get in. You could just go in, bubble off the point, and say, well, you're gonna have to come after me now because I'm here now and I can use this cover and rotate around the cover long enough, and I can primal and I can whatever to keep myself up. But there's a lot of things you can do. You just gotta slow down your gameplay against these comps. You've got to slow it down and think. You gotta avoid the Deadeye again. It's like you avoided the Deadeye for a while, but then you got bored and you were like, oh, I'm going up here, taking all this damage from the mines and the Deadeye. I think you got shot from the Deadeye too eventually. Did you? I know you took damage from the mines. I think you took damage from the Deadeye too, I'm not sure.
What the fuck? How did I die so fast?
Yeah. So it's it's the primal thing, right? Like I said, it's not an invincibility button. It is not an invincibility button. Not even when you were a nano before was that enough to save you. It definitely wasn't enough that time. You want to think about primal in terms of, let's make a list. I'm good at making these lists. Engagement tool. Engage tool. You want to think about it in terms of a disruption tool. Disrupt. Like you can use that to disrupt, like maybe a Genji blade. You toss them around the map and make it hard for him, or something like that. Or maybe pushing around someone who you know is about to ult to make it hard for them, or you just separate the team. I'm gonna put so I want to put that under disruption. We're just gonna say that's disruption. You can use it to isolate someone by pushing them out of, away from their team. You can use it to cut the team in half by pushing half of them back and half of them forward. Stuff like that, right? General disruption. You always think you can't die. Yeah, right. It's not an invincibility button. It's the hardest thing to learn as Winston, as a Winston player, is that your ult is not a... Yeah, it's not an invincibility button. To save yourself, yeah, I'm gonna get that. That's the fourth one. Second life. I'm just gonna call it second life. What was the third one I had listed earlier? I made a list for this earlier. I'm trying to think of what it was. I guess we'll call it like tanking. In a very rare scenario where you're like, I have to absorb as much damage as possible to take pressure off my team somehow. You can use it in that situation to try to be like, yo, look at me, I'm big. Come at me, bro. And, you know, take all the aggro. There are situations where that pops up. Like I said, in the majority of situations, it's better to avoid damage. There are certain situations where that can happen. You want to look cool when you emote. Yeah. And the other time is second life, if you absolutely must survive and, you know, you're getting low and you're like, okay, I gotta survive, so you just... Or another thing, I thought of another example of a disrupt, like, maybe your team gets frozen in a melee and you gotta start booping people around to try to throw off their aim or to try to generally disrupt them or take the pressure off of them. You can throw that in either tanking or disrupt, right? You can claim it's part of both. But yeah. You could make the argument to hold space longer, but you probably want to throw that under tanking, I guess. That's what you try to do. That's what you try to do. You try to do it to hold space longer, so to buy time for your team to get there. But yeah.
Down.
When you want to get visor off, that's like, yeah, it's like disrupting, right? Yeah. It's a good example. Hold on. Hold on 1 second. Can you guys hear the knock at my door when that happens? Anyway, sorry about that. So yeah.
On Doom.
So look, we're just peeking and we're holding the corner. We can get information without taking too much damage, without absorbing too much resource.
Zarya, that's too far, buddy.
Yeah, so you recognize you can't hold that space. See, this is some of the stuff that comes up with being GM players. Like, you know, hey, we can't hold that space anymore. Like, I'm not holding up there, our team is not holding that space. So the Zarya being up that far is, you know, it's just not gonna last that long. So you gotta know. That's another thing, you can jump in, place the bubble where the Hammond's gonna land, and now all these people who are on the outside of it don't get impacted by it. Maybe you get hit by it, but not your team. But yeah, that's another thing that comes along with being Winston and knowing the exact distances of the bubble. And this is when the recording starts to go a little haywire. It's not the stream, guys; it's the recording. So, yeah, I don't know how to coach this. Stuff is happening. You're dead. I don't know. But all right. So I think we've seen enough here, because I think the game ends here. If I'm not mistaken. I think we've seen enough to know exactly what's going on here, right? Trying to play too fast. We're taking too much damage. We're avoiding damage. We're thinking about who we're gonna dive instead of where we're gonna dive. We're not thinking about things in context of a tank. We're thinking about things in the context of who am I gonna kill, like a DPS mindset. That frame's just like completely went kaput there. So yeah, that's a lot of the problem there. And also, we're not using our bubble to block cooldowns, and we're engaging with too low HP. We're just generally trying to play too fast. Slow it down, use more cover, think about taking what space is favorable and what space isn't. Strike when an enemy is super isolated and you're like, oh, I can jump this now, then go for it, by all means. But it's not constantly your job to constantly keep disrupting enemies and jumping on enemies. That's not necessarily your job. Yeah. So that's mostly it. I feel like that was a pretty straightforward VOD review. So I think we're just gonna end the VOD review session there.